Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. You have made it to the end of the self-care month here on Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you, and we hope all these kind of quirky episodes that we put together is kind of like it's something a little bit different. You're always searching for
We'll be
themes.
back to your regularly scheduled program next week.
Of course.
This is our last full episode. We have one more short bite this Thursday where we're going to kind of round out this topic. But, we felt like this was kind of it was like a spring cleaning for us as parents. And this is the last one. So
today we're going to be talking about personal goals. You didn't know that I was going to do that.
Yeah. Today we wanted to talk about, we have so many goals for our homeschool. We're paying so much attention to our kids. We're giving them all of our energy and time. Yeah. But there's also things we personally want to accomplish or things we want to better ourselves and just different things. And, how can we find the time to carve out to, care for ourselves and reach our personal goals is what we wanted to talk about today.
Well, and you're very busy. You got the career and all that stuff, and I'm home with the kids, and I totally empathize with everybody listening who is home every single day, chasing kids, trying to cram phonics and addition and a little bit of science and keeping the house together. You are the first person to be put on the cutting room floor. Like you're the thing that gets cut from the movie every single day, and I know it can be very struggle. It can be a lot of struggle. It can be a lot of searching for meaning. Obviously you have meaning in your kids, but just having your own sense of accomplishments that are outside of this, every day working with the kids as I know is something that, I see it on the stay-at-home dad forums where they're talking about, I feel bored, I feel lost, rudderless, things of that nature. Almost always the comments come in, dude, you got to get a hobby. Dude, you got to figure out something else to do. Dude, you got to get some free time to go do and be a real person. You let those kids
we have to have an identity outside of just being a parent.
Exactly.
And that is a really hard thing to do.
It can be very hard.
It's hard to do for parents who send their kids off to school. And then because we homeschool, our lives are even more integrated with our children. And so it's really hard to have that separate identity.
Absolutely. And so today we're going to be talking about, you as the listener can only define whatever those goals are. Like if it's a hobby, if it's an accomplishment, if it's school, if it's getting fit, whatever that goal is, it's something you're going to have to define. But today we're going to be talking about, ways and means to achieve those things.
Right.
How can you move forward? So let's talk a little bit about, why achieving goals is such an important thing, as you're homeschooling. Why is it as important?
And I think it's really important. It's important because we need to have something to strive for, right? As humans, we want to continue to better ourselves. And so it's really important from that standpoint. It's also important that we need to pursue things that bring us joy, right? So if these goals that you have are, they bring you joy in the seeking of the goal, that's one thing. Or if achieving the goal is the thing that's gonna, like maybe you're learning to play an instrument and that's, that gives you joy throughout the whole process. Or maybe it's like, I'm want to start a small business and I'm going to be so happy when I have this business for myself. It's going to maybe ease some financial strain on my family or whatever it is, right? Like, you have to take the time to pursue the things that bring you happiness individually, aside from your identity as a parent.
Well, and it only makes sense because, if you think about the homeschool and taking care of the kids as a, full-time job, right? A lot of people like yourself and a lot of other people out there who work every day and come home, they have things that they do in their spare time, woodworking or, gardening or whatever that might be, or even a side business, a side gig that they've always wanted to do, or learning to play an instrument. That was a good example there. they're allowed to have those type of freedoms. They're allowed to have those type of goals and things. And that doesn't mean, why should you not have that same thing? Why should you not be able to, pursue something that gives you a lot of joy and a lot of meaning?
Right. And I think that it's hard because, when you have a job and, if you're if you're one of those people, and there are plenty of those people that can't let their job go right when they go home. But
I was one of those people. Yeah.
For a while, and until you got to a better company relationship. Yeah. But we as workers, we go in, we start working, we go home, we're off the clock. When you're a homeschool parent, you're kind of always on the clock, right? Your job is never
That's always the
over.
joke I tell you, like, hey, let's do something as a family this weekend. I'm like, wow, just another day ending in Y.
Right. Like you never get to get off the clock, right? Yeah. When I leave work, I can, say it's okay for me to forget about work until tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you're kind of living it always. So it's really important that you take that time to put yourself first.
Another important thing about goals is, it does set a good example to the people in your family, whatever that might be, showing mastery or showing struggle, having perseverance, and then, sharing that with your children, and, having them come along with that journey as well, whatever that might be. You are, as an example, are doing an MBA.
Right.
And
I'm
so
in the middle of my MBA program.
I can, talk to our daughter and say, look, mommy is studying. She's working hard. She's trying to get good grades. She's learning her material. She's reading. She's taking her lectures. She's listening to her teachers. And this is, a great example, a great working example to, show our daughter and be like, mommy's working hard. Daddy works hard. We all work hard.
Right. And I'm on the slow boat on my MBA because my company's helping to subsidize that, and I don't want to, go beyond the bounds of what they're subsidized, of course, per semester. So I'm not going to graduate with my MBA until early 2027. So this is the slow path.
Yeah.
But the thing is, by that time, the age of our kids, our older daughter is going to be 11. Our younger will be somewhere in the 7-8 zone. I'm purposely structuring it so that I'm going to finish in a spring semester so that I can go to graduation. I can go walk, and we're going to take a trip to the university I'm getting my degree at, and we're going to go to graduation. Yep. And my pretty impressionable kids at 11 and 8 are going to see mommy walk and get her graduate degree. And I think that the experience of that, and we're going to get to go and tour the college campus and have that whole thing. I almost think it's better that I'm graduating a little bit older with the kids a little bit older, because they're going to get to see that. And I'm thinking like, oh, what a great example this will be to show them, it's never too late in life to go back and get a degree. I have another friend who's thinking about maybe going back and getting her accounting degree. And it's like, what a great example that would be for your child to see you, not having given up on your dreams and continuing to pursue that.
Well, and you're pursuing different skills and different knowledge. And that's another reason why, pursuing your goals is great, because it can make you a more well-rounded person.
Absolutely.
Whether that skill is music that can then translate into homeschool.
Right. You learn the guitar, so then you can teach your kids a guitar.
Or even just understanding music theory can translate to, okay, maybe they don't want to play the guitar, but you can then teach them piano.
Right.
Or whatever that
or
might be.
Music appreciation, or you're starting a small business and you're figuring out all these things that you have to do to start. Maybe it means that you're going to be able to help your child better with their math, or with, you'll be able to even just impart lessons you're learning to them. Even in my MBA, even though it's, obviously so high level, there have been things that I've shared with my daughter that, it's like, oh yeah, mommy's right now learning about buying and selling relationships. She's like, buying and selling. I'm like, well, yeah, what happens? I'm in business law this semester. What happens when one person pays for something and the other person doesn't deliver it? She's like, oh, okay, well, and so she's thinking through all these logic problems that I'm giving her. And I'm like, yeah, there's a law for that. And yeah, this is what would happen. What do you think the law would be in a case where two people said they agreed to something and then one person didn't do the right thing? What do you think the law would do? And, so it's giving her some cool logic problems too. She's actually really enjoying.
Well, and you're kind of like overflowing with, information and knowledge, and that's kind of the importance, right? To have your cup filled. We've talked about having our children's cup filled and how well that allows them to have a better day, be ready for, new things, be a little bit more relaxed. We've seen, our kids be more relaxed. But if your cup is full, with your personal goals being achieved, you are then also ready to engage in different
Absolutely.
things like, oh, I feel fulfilled because I got an hour of working out today and I got a writing sprint in the morning. My day's done. From my standpoint, I'm free to do anything you want.
You don't have those things weighing on you.
Like, oh, I gotta do that thing later tonight. Like, one of my worst days is like, if I didn't get my workout in the morning, I didn't get the writing sprint, I've got to do that workout in the afternoon. But if the afternoon falls through, then I've got to do that in the evening. And all of a sudden, my evening gets really, really crunched and I don't have a lot of free time.
Right. And you're like, okay, let's get the kids to bed because I've got to
weigh me down.
Yeah.
And that can drain on you through the day. And so if I'm talking about doing that in the morning, your available time may only be at a certain time, but if you don't get your scheduled time, you'll feel a little empty and you'll want yourself to be fulfilled. And so that is another piece of, kind of that pie.
Yeah. We tend to feel drained if we don't get the time we need.
Talking about, goals in general, there is a really great acronym that people use for when you're defining a goal, because goals would be like, oh yeah, I want to go do that thing. But how do you get from A to B? And A to B is kind of that stretch. And a lot of times that's where a lot of the discovery is coming from. There are methods and ways of defining that path so that it is an achievable thing. So one of the famous ones, we may have all heard of it, but the SMART calculation. I know my goals for my corporate career, my quarterly goals that were tied to bonuses and, structured payouts and things of that nature, were all SMART driven.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like the only way to define something.
Our goals for this podcast are SMART driven. We talk about these.
We talk about this all the time.
Where do we want to be at as far as, download numbers, as far as, what we want to have achieved and covered and, that kind of stuff. We have SMART goals for this too.
Absolutely.
We had a whole episode on SMART goals that Matt will link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
That was more like how to use SMART for your homeschool, but let's get into SMART a little bit.
Yeah. So basically it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely.
Okay. So let's break it down just really quick.
A lot of times you can say like, oh, I want to go do this thing, but unless you are specific about what that goal is, like the micro details.
I want to be the best podcast in the world.
That's not
specific.
Yeah.
I want to hit 250,000 downloads by our third year.
Yeah.
That's a specific goal.
Because it is measurable.
It's
right?
measurable.
It has some data that's associated to it. So you have S and AM.
Yeah, we couldn't say I want to be a medium-sized podcast by our third year. What does medium-sized mean? Right? You have to have some way to measure it. So
and then the next thing is you have measurable thing, but you got to make sure also that specific thing that you defined is achievable.
Right. I want to have 5 million downloads by our third year, and right now we're only at 150 or whatever. That's not going to happen.
So the next one would be realistic. Sometimes they say relevant as well, but we like the term realistic because a lot of times the goals that you have defined and the actions that you're taking to those goals may not be realistic with the resources and time that you have. Like, for example, my goal is to write 12 books in 1 year. That's not realistic with the time that you have and the resources that you have.
Technically, you as a person could achieve 12 books in a year.
But you'd have to write 5,000 words a day.
Right, but if you only have an hour a day, then it wouldn't be realistic.
Yeah, and I always like the term realistic because it structures not just the specific, the measurable, the achievable. It asks the overarching question. It kind of goes to the top line and says, is the total thing that you're doing realistic? Like, I want to create a fashion brand that's going to make $10 million and, out of my garage. And that's not really realistic. You might be able to do something that's boutique and small that you can sell on Etsy, right? That's something that's probably a little bit more realistic as opposed to these grand visions.
Yeah, it lets you really look at, what resources and time do I have to put into it?
Exactly.
Which is so key to actually being able to achieve your goal.
And the other thing that comes with the kind of the measurable thing is the timely. And that was kind of in the realistic as well.
You'll see timely or time bound.
I want to be able to do this thing with these measurable goals that's achievable and realistic in this time. And
right.
Is that time
by this date or whatever?
If by this date, by maybe at the end of the year or in the next 2 years or whatever that might be. Like, for example, today we were at my writers group and we were asking the writers in the room, what are your goals for the next 5 years? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And that's such a big question. I would actually have pulled that in. Where do you see yourself at the end of the year? Right? Because 5 years there's so many variations.
Lots of things could happen in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know. But where are you going to be in a year? Like that's something that's achievable. 365 days. You're going to go on a weight loss journey. Where are you going to be in a year? Right? Where are you going to be in 6 months? Like that's something that's very timely, and you can put your goals in that distance. And why I like having the timeliness with a goal is because it makes it more present, right? Something close to you, something that's, near. And there's something funny about when people start to try to work towards a goal that is like 60, 90, 120 days away. That's something that's like really, really close. Like that's something you can really work towards.
You can see and take action.
You can sacrifice in the short term. Like for example, like, oh, Ariel's going to do you're going to work on a play, right? And it's going to take 2 or 3 months to prepare to the final end. And that's something that's very timely. I'm going to be the best. This is going to be my first, time at this position on the play, or my first time I'm going to be stage managing, or the first time I'm stage managing with this large of a cast, right? These are, very timely goals where you can commit to it for, 2 or 3 months, right?
Absolutely.
And then at the back end of that, you'll say, I will now have this experience, or I'll now have this capability. And then I can go forward and say, well, what's going to happen over my next, 6 months? This is kind of a methodology around the agile development with our software that I used to do. Understanding and looking at things in shorter time horizons, because you can get work done and then you say, okay,
you get that sense of achievement.
I've achieved this thing. I've learned something. Now I need to make the next step. I have my 2 or 3 or 4 year goal in place. Okay, maybe I want to do this thing,
right.
But I'm taking these steps that are timely and that are achievable, that are measurable, that are realistic, that are, something I can do.
Right. With my MBA, I had to take a series of foundational courses because I don't have a business background. I have an engineering background. Yeah. And when I finish with those courses, which I've just finished with my last one, I'm going to receive a graduate certificate. And that was like, okay, that was my first step, my minimum viable product.
You could, your MVP, you could get that. And you could say, I'm done. I think I'm good.
Right. I could say, that was too much on my family. We can't do it. As it turned out, I've really been enjoying it. I'm going to continue and I want to get my full degree. But it was like, okay, great. That was like an initial thing. And now I'm going to get this piece of paper next month. And I think it's really going to help just boost me into my next classes and keep going.
So once you have your goal set and you kind of have some measurable, details about it, the next thing that you can do is to begin to prioritize. And that's really the big thing, because once the rubber hits the road, you need to know where it lives.
How are you going to get it done?
Where it lives on the hierarchy. Are the people around you that matter the most that could be impacted by this aware of your goals?
And supportive of it.
And are they supportive of it? Your spouse, your children, just your regular schedule, the homeschool in general. Can you achieve this thing? And as a job for me for almost 12 years, it was my job to prioritize, what we did next. Like that was my job. It was like, okay,
for the engineering team.
Yeah. What are we doing next? What features are we going to work on? What software bugs do we have to do? And I have to give them the priority. So like prioritization was like my job for like a long time. And so that's something that I am like acutely aware of, like what is the most highest priority item right now? Or, where does everything live on the priority level? Okay. Kids are number 1, homeschool's number 2, keeping the house and the people fed number 3, and then I get my level? Is that where I am?
Right.
Where my goals? So understanding where you fit in the priority and letting everybody know around you, what is important to you, what you need to achieve that. Like I can go to you and say, hey sweetie, dinner's done, dishes are done, kids have been educated, dog has been taken out and fed. Can I get 45 minutes to do a writing sprint?
Right.
And then you're like, absolutely. I can shut the door, put my headphones in, have my Blade Runner ambient music play, and I can go into it. Right. And we have that kind of working then you'll say, hey, tonight I got my class tonight. I'm like, no big deal. I got it. I'm going to do activities in the kitchen. We want to make sure not to bother you. And then you get that time to do your
absolutely.
Your school,
we support each other. And, if you can get your spouse to support, if you need to, maybe you need to call in grandma or you need to call in a friend every once in a while, because it's like, hey, I need this. We frequently do, or not as frequently as we'd like, but maybe once a quarter, we like to do a podcast working day where we do a bunch of recording. We do a bunch of talking and brainstorming about what we want to do.
We go on long walks, talk about what we're doing.
Right. Who we want to interview, where we want to take the show. We really talk about this. And so things
like this self-care entire month come out of meetings like that. Where
Yes,
say,
our last meeting, this is what we came up with.
I remember we were going the full distance on our walk. We call it the full distance. It's like a mile. But we were wrapping around that corner. I'm like, wow, what if we did like a self-care thing? Like talking about, taking care of ourselves.
We're like,
as parents.
April, that's a great time, you know, and it's kind of spring and you kind of feel rejuvenated and renewed. And we're like, this is a good time to do it.
Came out of that type of
right.
meeting,
And that was a day that was brought to you by Grandma because we asked Grandma if she would help us out and take the kids for the day so that we could have this time to do what we need to do to meet our goals. Exactly. So, reach out. And the other thing is involve your children with my schooling. I've sat down and talked with our kids. Mommy's going to school just like you do school at home. And this is really important to me. And there's going to be times I can't be with you. Sometimes our little one, she'll come in and I'll say, gotta be quiet, Mommy's on school. And she'll go, okay. And she'll just want to sit on my lap and she'll be really good. She'll
play with their little squishies.
Right. She won't mess with the keyboard or anything. And she'll just sit with me and cuddle and she'll be quiet because she knows that this is my school time. Yeah. And, we've talked with a lot of homeschool parents who do have, they do work remotely or something part of their time at home.
We have a great interview coming up in a couple weeks here.
Yeah,
where a woman is helping and kind of sharing the duties there.
Right, and so those parents do that. They talk to their kids. Hey, this is important to me, and you think about it with your work, like, hey, it's important. Mommy's on a meeting. Yeah. You don't think about it though necessarily with your own personal goals. So you may need to have that conversation with them about, hey, Mommy or Daddy is working on this thing, and this is why it's important to me. Get their buy-in so you can help get their support.
Yep. Well, like even just tonight when I was putting down our oldest, I told her, I said, hey, Daddy's got to work out in the morning. I'm going to get my workout in, and then I'm going to make you guys breakfast. And then I want to get some good homeschool because I got a special treat for you coming up at 10 o'clock. But I was like conveying like Daddy needs to get his workout in the morning. So you're going to play nicely with your sister, and I'm going to get that done in the morning. And then we're going to have something fun. And then she goes, okay, Daddy, no problem. I promise. Good homeschool tomorrow. I promise. I was like communicating what I needed from them in order to, for them to get something fun or for me to be released to the wild and allow them to, do something entertaining. And she's like, well, what are we doing? I said, I'm not going to tell you. She goes, is there donuts involved? I said, no, there's no donuts involved. Are you crazy? Next thing is for me, something that's really helped me with kind of tracking my goals and putting them in the forefront. We all have the black 2001 monoliths in our pockets that we carry around and we stare at like zombies.
The dad jokes they're so stellar tonight. So stellar.
Stellar. I always like to use apps to help me track those things. I have an issue with inbox zero, so I don't like to have any badges that have any like messages that are unread or emails that...
The little bubbles on all your apps that say like, ooh, 1 or 2 or whatever.
Exactly. So I use a couple apps that really help me kind of keep these things in perspective. The first one I've been using for a bunch of years, almost like 3 years now, is Strides. Strides is a great app. You can get up to 7 daily habits before you have to pay. So it's so you just get capped at about 7. And I found that 7 is, for the most part, really good.
Kind of more than you need.
More than you need. And so that allows me to track in each goal that you set in there, which is, 1 through 7, you can just click it off on a daily basis and then it refreshes the next day. Can have different achievable goals. Like, for example, I got to work out 5 days a week, right? So I have to hit that bubble 5 times in the week and it keeps a running tally. Mm-hmm. And then when it's done, it drops off in that week. Like, for example, I have a goal that I have to clean the house and organize things 3 hours a week. And if I do it like 1 hour in a day,
doing some home improvement,
some type of home improvement, like cleaning the garage or reorganizing something or purging some old toys or whatever. If I click that off 3 times, like on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it drops away. And on Sunday and Saturday and Sunday, that goal is no longer in that list. So my daily list kind of truncates. But I also have another goal where I've set it to be something that's cumulative. So I set an end target at the end of the year, and every single day I have to do that thing. Mm-hmm. And that's like my words, right? So at the end of the year, I need to write 150,000 words. Every single day, I got to write 500 words. So at the end of the day, I get my words in, I count them up on my Word document, and boom, it was 650. I put it in there, and it keeps a running tally of what I've done for the year. So you can set different like parameters on each goal, and it's really, really helpful. I have one that's been going for 3 years on like, what was my average sleep? like I track my sleep on a daily basis now.
Yeah, because you found you were running too slim. You were staying up late and working on things, and you were like, yeah, I want to improve my sleep, improve my health.
Yeah, so it's a big thing that I've been focusing on, trying to drive that habit, and I do that through that app. The next app that I like to use is called Minimalist, and I'll put it in the show notes because it's kind of a tough one to say. It's not minimalist, but it's minimalist. It's a very simple, crude way to just keep a quick tally of something. So these are things that I need to achieve or do for the week. Like, watch that lecture on YouTube. Make sure you go and work on your cover for your new book over here. And
it's a to-do list.
It's kind of a to-do list, but I like it because I can put it on my home screen on the app, my Apple phone, my iPhone. My Apple phone. I got one of them Apple phones. It ain't working right. Yeah, I'm not working right. And I can just quickly look at it, and you can just swipe it off, shake it, and it disappears. So it's a great way to do a to-do list. I really have enjoyed that one. Another one that I think was bought out by, it used to be called Wunderlist. It was bought by Microsoft and it was changed to the To-Do app. I really like this one because it's a web-based one, so you can work on like your desktop. You can work on your phone, and they all sync. It's really nice. And you can kind of approximate kind of a Kanban board with it. And that maybe we'll talk about that one day.
Yeah,
later this year.
you know, and you can make different lists with different names on them.
Yep.
So it's kind of nice. Just like, here's my home list. Here's my work list. Here's my homeschool list.
It was
whatever.
super helpful. And then there's obviously the Google Task and Calendar. And we'll save that for Thursday's episode. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we use our Google Calendar and why it's so important. So those are a couple quick apps that I like to use. So if you're trying to track your goals, track your progress, change some habits. These are apps that have been really helpful to me in general.
Yep. So that kind of wraps up our thoughts on personal goals. This is the end of this is the last week of our self-care week. And so we just kind of wanted to, wrap this all together with a bow and talk about, our big takeaways. What we really want to convey, and what we, on that long walk, what we kind of thought about was the things that we really wanted to say were that, you're important.
Yeah.
You as an individual, not just as a parent, not just as a spouse, you're important, and you shouldn't shortchange yourself. That balance is really important because without it, we're not going to be able to give our kids our best.
I think the balance,
our homeschooling will suffer along with other parts of our lives.
Absolutely. But, I think the balance is really key, especially if you're trying to achieve things that are personal to you, like a weight loss journey, like we talked about earlier, or, if you're trying to do something that's more personal health, like mental health issues that you're trying to deal with your anxiety and whatnot, you're trying to improve yourself there. Here, maybe you're trying to do something that is more goal-oriented or hobby-oriented. Whatever it is, the balance between those things that matter most to you in your own personal life juxtaposed against, your homeschool and your children and keeping the house and, your relationship with your spouse and all these other important things, you are just as important. And I think the balance is a hard thing to learn and a hard thing to keep. Another thing too is, if you haven't prioritized your own needs, it's never too late to start. Like, everything we've talked about this week, whether it's our weight loss journey or hobbies, a number of these things that we've talked about, we've given examples of throughout all these episodes, is they can start at different times. I mean, Sure. I've been a stay-at-home dad for 7+ years now. I'm constantly changing and adjusting and trying to improve and setting new goals and reading goals. Like, how many books am I reading for the year, or how many books am I trying to write, or how much weight am I trying to lift over my head on a daily basis? I'm always trying to do new things, and whatever your goals are in your life, they can change over time. And it's not a thing. It's never too late to start.
It's never too late. And, there may be some adjustment time as your family gets used to you changing those priorities and finding time for yourself, but it's worthwhile. Overall, biggest parting thought is that we want our children to see that caring for yourself, that it matters, because we want them to be adults that recognize that their own needs are valid, right? I want my kids, it's good for our kids to see us take time for ourselves and prioritize things that matter to us. I don't want my daughter to grow up and become a mom and think that her identity as an individual is gone, and all the things that she hoped and dreamed for herself that she wanted to do, that all of that goes away because her only identity is now that she's a mom and that's it. And I feel like it's, especially for moms, it's really tough for us to separate. And there's a lot of mom guilt and there's a lot of mom shaming there's a lot of, we women love to judge each other instead of support each other. I don't get that, but we seem to do it a lot. Mm-hmm. So surround yourself with people that support you and show your kids that, that their needs are going to be valid even after their parents. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is that it's really important. It's important for you and it's important for them to see it.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So let's end it the way we've always ended. What are we consuming these days? Ariel and I have gotten into a new podcast. We watch it. We have it together now. It's on the consortium called owned by Wondery. Wondery, if you're listening and you want to have an awesome homeschool podcast, give us a ring. But they're basically a company that buys up other podcasts.
Yeah.
And they kind of have this brand of podcasts that, there's like true crime stuff, there's entertainment, comedy, sports. They have all these different types of podcasts that are underneath their umbrella. Mm-hmm. And one of them I got recommended from another podcast that I listened to, which I think is Tides of History. They talked about the History Daily podcast.
Yeah, this podcast is great, y'all. And it's just totally. I've yet to encounter anything that wasn't family safe.
I mean, it's just some of the topics might be kind of heavy.
I mean, it's history, right? So there's things that happened that were bloody and awful.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of the MO.
There was no like language or
it's actually,
anything like that.
Yeah, it's very clean, very family friendly, language wise. Content wise might be a little bit heavy, but really great for kind of like that late elementary, middle school, obviously all the way up into high school and
adult. We love it. So
elderly podcasters like ourselves.
It's what happened on this day in history, and he tells it in a kind of a story format. So
and he doesn't just talk about the day; he talks about
everything that like led up
to the day, and even past that day. Sometimes
he's done some really cool. I listened to the one on the assassination of Julius Caesar,
yeah.
and he talked all about why that happened, and they're all about 10 minutes or so, 10 to 14 minutes, something in there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of commercials in there, but yeah, like he tells you, you can do it. No, don't skip through the ads. That's how people make money. Like one of the ones I really enjoyed was the storm that saved Japan when
that was a good one.
Was that a good one? Yeah, the Mongols were coming, and the storm came out of nowhere and wrecked all the boats, and saved Japan from that invasion. Every single day there's something. If a topic comes up and you're like, I'm not really interested in that, you delete it. There's going to be another one tomorrow.
Right. And depending on the age of your kids, you may say like, that's a bloodier one. We'll just skip that one. They're not ready for that. But I have learned an incredible amount.
And there was these little short snippets. It's like a really well done Wikipedia article.
Right, but it's so short. We did this. The one that stuck out to me the most, I was telling my dad, I was like, you have to listen to this.
Yeah.
There was one all about the VW bug.
I didn't get that one.
Oh, you got to listen to that one. That one's great. The VW Beetle episode. I had no idea it was like Hitler's pet project.
Oh, yeah, I knew about that.
Yeah, but I didn't know all about the ins and outs of this.
All right, I'm going
and I think it's so interesting because, I kind of think of that as like a hippie type car. But it had all of these different routes. And so there are just some super interesting ones.
The Rise of the VW Beetle. I just downloaded it.
Oh, yeah. You got to do that one. It's a really good one. So, yeah, it's a great show. It's really short. It's every day. It's what happened that day in history.
Yeah.
And it might be a really good springboarding to, open up and do further study on something.
He has kind of like matinee episodes and like encore episodes on Saturday and Sunday. I haven't listened to any of those.
No,
I really just stick to the Monday to Friday episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And, those type of daily episodes that I've always noticed can kind of pile up over time, and you can kind of feel inbox zero type of guy like myself. I hate it when podcasts kind of pile up, and I want to just get through them all. And I found that to be a little anxiety driven. So if I don't like knee jerk jump into it, I'll just delete it for the day. Or if I'm like going to be busy that day, I might leave it, see what comes up tomorrow, and if something's better tomorrow, I'll delete it. Just depending on what your day is. But they're super enjoyable. really short little snippets.
No, the host's name is Lindsey Graham. It's not that Lindsey Graham.
It's so funny. He has that in his bio. It's like, I'm Lindsey Graham, not that Lindsey Graham.
Right. Yeah. No, it's different. It's a different guy.
Every time I've heard it advertised on like another podcast that's in the Wondery umbrella, I was like, Lindsey Graham runs this, not that Lindsey Graham, different Lindsey Graham.
Yeah. But he's really good, very engaging. We think you'll really like it. So if your family is into history at all, check out the History Daily podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
Happy homeschooling!